नमस्कार, आदाब, सत श्री अकाल, बहुत बहुत गुड डे सारे सुनियतों के सामाईन नाजरीन लिसनर्स एंड एंड व्यूअर्स और दर्शकगण और श्रोतागण को हमारी बेहद खुशी है, extremely happy and excited to have Mr. Deepak Joshi, a renowned podcaster, social media active person who lives in Melbourne. And I know he's been around for quite a while. We did meet a while back a few years ago, but we did not continue our communiques. But lately we have come together for a particular, let's say, point of view. So very much welcome, Deepak Bhai, Deepak Joshi ji. You are very welcome to Suniye Tau. I have introduced you to the extent that is possible for me, but I would like your own introduction of yourself. It can be as long as you like. You have the full forum.
जी शुक्रिया इकबाल साहब, thank you for having me on your program, Suniye Tau. What should I say? I've been in Australia for about 26 years now.
Wonderful.
And I have been, I've worked in the banking and financial services sector. I've worked in the Australian Public Service. Now I am self-employed entrepreneur. And I'd like to believe that I'm a social justice activist. I'm the founder of an organization called the Humanism Project, which basically advises government, media, policymakers on issues very specific to the South Asian diaspora, especially the Indian diaspora. We monitor the situation within the diaspora in Australia, and also the things in India. And so yeah, that's what we do. And I'm very happy to be on your program.
Great. And so are we at Suniye Tau, and indeed we are thankful that you could find a time, although we had initially discussed around 26th of August, and we now are able to talk, which is very kind of you. Okay, let's move on to our hot topic these days, which is the voice of referendum. So can you please explain to our viewers what it is all about, and then we'll take it further.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. It's the referendum to vote for the voice to Parliament, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders' voice to Parliament, it is called, and it's a decision taken by the government and the Prime Minister to action his commitment, which was an election promise, to the Uluru Statement from the Heart. The Uluru Statement from the Heart is a petition by Australia's Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. So, आपको मालूम ही होगा what those are. They are Australia's Indigenous people who have been here much, a long time before the migrants came. Australia was colonized a few hundred years ago. And in this Uluru Statement from the Heart, the Australian Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, they called for structural reforms, in recognizing of the sovereignty of Indigenous people, and to address the structural disadvantage they have suffered over several years. As many would be aware, this island was invaded, and basically what happened was a genocide. Very large number of indigenous population was killed. They were powerless. Their children were taken away from them, and the concept of stolen generation is very well known. And what has happened as a result of the structural imbalance, disadvantage that they have suffered, and the intergenerational trauma, as it is called, their representation is very low in every aspect of Australian life, whether it is jobs, public service, media, sports, and they are overrepresented in places like prisons. So yes, so that was the first step in actioning the government's commitment to the Uluru Statement from the Heart, which is what a petition by the representatives of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, their leaders, to recognize their sovereignty and to address these structures. It's a very simple one-page statement, and it calls for creation of two new institutions. One is a constitutionally protected First Nations voice, and also a commission to investigate what happened in the past and to do some truth telling.
Yes,
So,
if I could add here, Australian continent is historically believed to be more than 65,000 years old, and the generation of original people who lived here is also considered to be at least 55,000 years in history. And they had their own what you call methods of managing the land and the fauna and flora that existed on this, and they lived their own life, which was very much harmonious. And still there are tribes that you can find in Australia who are very harmonious with the nature. They do not destroy nature. They only use what they need to, and only at the time when they need to. They don't hoard anything. And so, in fact, they have been the actual, if you like, guardians and caretakers of this land. And about 500 years ago, 1800 something, British colonial forces came in and just dug a flag in the ground and said, "This is ours." Now, these people were so what you call uncertain about the situation. They didn't really fight the situation, and they were in smaller numbers and scattered, and therefore they did not have any what may be called resistance. Yet they were treated very badly, to say the least. And the history shows how, like you mentioned, the stolen generation and how their education was not really promoted, and they had been discriminated against. It's only in this century have they been really recognized to have their own study situations and so on. And therefore, we need to talk about it and at least let them have some platform. Okay, please go ahead.
So yes, towards the turn of the century, there was a demand that Australian government should recognize that atrocities had happened, and things like stolen generation and massacres of indigenous communities. And then in 2007, there was an apology by the then Prime Minister, which basically for the first time recognized what has happened, and Kevin Rudd apologized on behalf of of Australia.
Mhm.
And of course, there has been a demand that there has to be a treaty between the government and First Nations people.
Mhm.
And as a result of which, the Uluru Statement from the Heart came up with, that statement came up, which basically demanded the voice, an agreement in the form
Mhm.
of a treaty, and truth-telling.
Mhm.
So I think truth-telling, the concept of truth-telling, some people will remember there was last heard when South Africa came out from the apartheid era, and the new government under Nelson Mandela had a truth commission, which
Mhm.
basically documented what had happened in the past
Mhm.
for the world to recognize it had happened, and it
Mhm.
was an important part of reconciliation
Mhm.
with the past, with the present. So I think that that is something that needs to be done in Australia as
Mhm.
well, and it has been recognized. So this referendum is the first step in
Mhm.
that process,
Mhm.
where this form of a referendum will happen, which is expected to recognize
Mhm.
um, the Indigenous communities in the Australian Constitution. For any change in the Constitution in Australia, you need a referendum.
Mhm.
Referendum is basically people voting
Mhm.
to decide that such a change should happen, and if the overall referendum is successful, that the change must occur,
Mhm.
then that then becomes the law. So,
Mhm.
so yeah, that is the idea,
Mhm.
to enshrine an Indigenous voice to Parliament
Mhm.
into the Australian Constitution. That
Mhm.
is the idea of the referendum.
Mhm. I know there has been a pamphlet out sent in the mail to all of us here, at least in metro cities, I believe, which explains the what it is, and then also presents two opposing points of view. We should vote yes
Yes,
and or we vote no, and they've been given reasons. The reasons have been given in that document. Do you
yes,
have any thing to say or display for our viewers?
yes. So, so as I said, it's the first of the key reforms, proposed by the Uluru Statement. This is a referendum for that.
Mm-hmm.
There will be a question, a simple question asked in the referendum,
Mm-hmm.
um, which I think is referendum question will be a proposed law to alter the constitution to recognize the First Peoples of Australia by establishing an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders voice.
Mm-hmm.
And then the question is going to be asked to the voters: do you approve
Mm-hmm.
this proposed alteration?
Mm-hmm.
And it has to be answered in yes or no.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and for the referendum to be successful, majority of Australians have to say yes
Mm-hmm.
to it. So that's there are two requirements: one for the majority of Australians to say yes, and then the majority of the states
Mm-hmm.
um, to also say yes. So Australians in the majority of the states. So there are 6 states that are voting.
Mm-hmm.
The territories are not counted. So the 6 states, 4 of the 6 states have to vote in favor of the amendment to the
Mm-hmm.
constitution. And if that happens, yeah, possible. So, yes.
Is there any document you wish to share here on the screen, or shall we include it later on?
We can, there is some information that is available.
Mhm.
People who wish to, um, you know, more details and look at any information. So there is a voice.gov.au website, and I'll give you a glimpse of that.
Sure.
Um, um, So yes, so
Wonderful.
as you can see,
Yeah,
it's
I can see. Yes, thank you.
yes, it's it has an information booklet, its homepage, and then it comes with a lot of links. So you can get all the details that you want.
Mm-hmm.
What will the voice do? How would the how will it be set up? Now, one of the questions that is being asked is, why do we need a voice?
Mm-hmm.
So, the government can do it even without a constitutional amendment. Why do you need to amend the constitution?
Mm-hmm.
So, the answer to that is that having it enshrined in the constitution means that then it is entrenched. The future governments, and if it is not enshrined in the constitution, then the legislation can easily be changed by the government of the day. The constitution cannot be changed. It will need another referendum. So once the voice is approved, it will be there permanently. Structure, the way it functions might be changed, but yeah. So that really is the reason why it needs to be enshrined in the constitution, because then it will remain an enduring part of Australia's governing structure with stability, regardless of which party is in power. So
okay, Deepak, wonderful. Thank you very much, and we will continue the rest in our second part of this podcast.